Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief Headlines Edition, all the daily AI news you need in around 5 minutes. Things are getting a little feisty in AI land. We're seeing more and more aggressive competition when it comes to data, and even some companies that were previously partners kind of starting to be at loggerheads with one another. In particular, tensions between OpenAI and Microsoft are flaring up as OpenAI's for-profit conversion stalls out. Last month, you'll remember that OpenAI abandoned plans to ditch their nonprofit structure, but remained committed to converting to a public benefit company. The conversion would still unlock normal corporate structure with regular equity shares and a path to going public. Microsoft were reportedly the only ones on the cap table in opposition to the conversion, given their lucrative revenue and profit-sharing agreement. Microsoft is currently entitled to a 20% share of revenues and a 49% share of profits. It's all very speculative, but the deal is capped out at around $120 billion. Negotiations have been ongoing since October when the conversion was first contemplated, but the Wall Street Journal reports that they've become more difficult in recent weeks. The journal writes, OpenAI's executives have discussed what they view as a nuclear option, accusing Microsoft of anti-competitive behavior during their partnership. Now, that would involve seeking a federal regulatory review of the investment contract for antitrust violations. OpenAI is also considering a PR campaign to turn public opinion against Microsoft. Issuing a joint statement, however, the two companies wrote, "We have a long-term productive partnership that has delivered amazing AI tools for everyone. Talks are ongoing, and we are optimistic that we will continue to build together for years to come." Sources also told the journal that the Windsurf acquisition was part of the problem. Currently, Microsoft has full access to all of OpenAI's IP, including models and systems. But OpenAI doesn't want Microsoft to gain access to Windsurf's technology, which would make GitHub Copilot more competitive as an AI coding product. A Windsurf spokesperson said that the acquisition was quote-unquote speculative, suggesting the deal is still in limbo while the dispute is ongoing. The rest of the negotiations are about how many shares Microsoft will get post-conversion, as well as OpenAI wanting to be released from exclusivity agreements. The information reports that OpenAI is offering Microsoft a 33% stake in the restructured company, which is a huge haircut from the 49% profit-sharing agreement. Regarding the exclusivity agreement, the information writes, OpenAI has told investors it wants to get out of its exclusive cloud contract with Microsoft, which makes Microsoft the only cloud provider that offers OpenAI models for sale through an API. Microsoft rivals Amazon and Google could jump at the chance to host OpenAI models on their servers, which would make it easier for their cloud customers to use them. They also note that Google has already lobbied the government to kill the exclusive deal. Microsoft is also seeking to access OpenAI's technology past the current end date of 2030, with an ongoing debate about the definition of AGI. And lurking behind all of this is that OpenAI faces an end-of-year deadline to complete its restructuring, or to potentially lose out on at least $20 billion in committed fundraising. I would characterize the community's response to this as not all that surprised. Matthew Berman writes, "No one could have seen this coming. It's kind of like the Thucydides trap. Eventually, Microsoft and OpenAI will go to war. Sam Altman has ambitions far greater than being the model provider powering Microsoft Copilot. He wants OpenAI to be Microsoft, Apple, and Google all rolled into one. Be interesting to see how this plays out." Now, in another area of competition around all of these big labs, Google is cutting ties with Scale AI following their deal with Meta. Citing 5 sources, Reuters reports that Google is ending their relationship with Scale after Meta soft acquired them. Google had been Scale AI's #1 customer and was planning to spend about $200 million this year on data labeling. Reuters sources added that Microsoft and xAI were also planning to end their contracts. Reportedly, Scale brought in $870 million in revenue last year, with $150 million of it coming from Google. A Scale spokesperson declined to comment on the Google relationship, but insisted the company's business remains strong. They added that the startup will continue to operate independently and safeguard customers' data. For competitors, this is a big opportunity. Labelbox CEO Manu Sharma said that they would generate hundreds of millions of new revenue from customers fleeing Scale. Garrett Lord, the CEO of Handshake, said, "Our demand has tripled overnight after the news." For some, this opens the question of what exactly Meta just paid $15 billion for. Signal writes, Meta paying $15 billion for 49% implies around a $30 billion post-money valuation. But that price was set before the recent exodus, OpenAI, Google, possibly others, shifting to in-house infrastructure or rivals. If those departures create a revenue tied to that 51%, then the implied valuation from the Meta deal is massively distorted post-facto. Zuck basically ends up with a business where $15 billion got you an entire company without actually buying the whole company. Now, if you think that that means that it's increasingly looking like most of the value of the deal seems to be about bringing CEO Alexander Wang and key members of his team in-house, you are not alone in that feeling. Indeed, details are emerging from inside the massive deal, explaining exactly how this whole thing went down. The information reports that the deal started with Mark Zuckerberg floating a relatively modest, or at least comparably modest, $5 billion investment into Scale back in mid-April. Even at that early stage, he was primarily negotiating to secure CEO Alexander Wang as the leader of his superintelligence team rather than the company itself. Wang countered with $20 billion, arguing that existing shareholders wouldn't go for a smaller investment that risked destroying value in the company as customers fled. The pair eventually met at $14.3 billion for just under half of the company. The report states this ultimately represents a $12.8 billion windfall for existing stockholders via a dividend paid for by Meta's investment. That includes over $1 billion for Wang himself, according to sources close to the company. They said the payout will vest over 5 years as long as Wang remains employed at Meta, and there have also been discussions of Wang taking on the title of Chief AI Officer. The information writes, Zuckerberg's deputies were concerned that Meta was paying a lot to be a minority shareholder with few rights in a startup that was losing its founder. The startup had also recently failed to meet its own financial projections. Behind the scenes, they worked to shift the deal more in Meta's favor. They report that if Scale sells within the next 2.5 years, Meta will get fully paid back before other investors see a dime. The article also suggests that Meta is walking a tightrope between financial, regulatory, and strategic concerns. It all seems pretty clear based on all the reporting so far that what Zuckerberg cares about is getting back in the AI race, and he believes very strongly that Wang is the person to lead that effort. This is a fascinating report with just a ton of hardball on how the deal came together. At one stage, Meta asked for full voting rights. Aside from the appointment of board members, Meta also asked for a poison pill that would inflate their control if Alexander Wang was found to be helping to run Scale while working at Meta. Basically, the overall tenor of all of this is that both sides knew the deal risked destroying value at the startup and needed some form of protection. Through their liquidation preference, Meta secured a return on their investment if Scale is sold off. For existing investors and staff, the protection was a lucrative payout now rather than risking the company falling off. This deal, it feels, is going to be very binary. Either it's going to make Zuckerberg look like a genius or an absolutely insane person, and only time is going to tell which. For now, though, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief headlines. Next up, the main episode.